Dylan Sprouse is making headlines right now. Not for a movie, not for a red carpet appearance, and definitely not for anything scripted. This is real life, and it's the kind of story that feels like it was pulled straight out of a Hollywood thriller, except it actually happened. In the early hours of April 17th, 2026, sometime around 12:30 in the morning, while most of Los Angeles was asleep, something unexpected unfolded outside Dylan Sprouse's home in the Hollywood Hills. What should have been just another quiet night turned into a tense, high-stakes moment that has now captured global attention. The stillness of the night was broken by something subtle at first: movement, a presence, something that didn't feel right. It's that instinct people talk about, the one that tells you something is off even before you fully understand what you're looking at. For Dylan and his wife Barbara Palvin, that instinct kicked in fast. Barbara noticed it first: a figure, a stranger, someone where no one should be. And in that moment, everything changed. The calm, private world of their home suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable, uncertain. Barbara immediately called emergency services. Her voice likely carried that mix of urgency and disbelief that comes when something like this happens. Because, let's be honest, no one expects their night to turn into a situation involving a potential intruder. But while help was on the way, Dylan made a decision. He didn't stay inside. He didn't wait behind locked doors. He stepped outside. And that choice is what has everyone talking. Because stepping outside doesn't just mean confronting a person. It means stepping into the unknown, into uncertainty, into risk. And in that moment, Dylan had no guarantee of what he was walking into. Reports say Dylan confronted the individual directly. Think about that for a second. It's dark, it's quiet, and you're stepping towards someone whose intentions you don't know. That takes a certain kind of mindset, part instinct, part adrenaline, part determination. The situation escalated quickly. Dylan physically engaged with the intruder, forcing him to the ground. It wasn't some dramatic, choreographed scene. It was raw, real, and unpredictable. The kind of struggle where anything can happen in seconds. Every movement matters. Every second counts. There's no script, no rehearsals, and no safety nets. And then came the moment that really shifted everything. Dylan reportedly held the individual at gunpoint, maintaining control of the situation while waiting for police to arrive. It's a striking image, not because it's cinematic, but because it's not. It's a real person in a real situation making real-time decisions under pressure. A moment where instinct overrides hesitation, where protecting what matters most becomes the only priority. Minutes later, law enforcement arrived and took over. The suspect was handcuffed, detained, and removed from the property. The immediate danger had passed, but the weight of what had just happened lingered. Because moments like that don't just end when the police arrive, they stay with you. Authorities later clarified that the incident was classified as trespassing, since the individual never actually entered the home. But that distinction doesn't change how it felt in the moment, because when someone is on your property in the middle of the night, uninvited, the line between trespassing and something more serious can feel very thin. The suspect, whose identity has not been publicly revealed, was arrested not just for the incident itself, but due to outstanding warrants. So while this may not have escalated into a burglary, it wasn't harmless either. And that adds another layer to the story, because it raises questions. Who was this person? Why were they there? Was this random or intentional? Was the house being watched beforehand?
Was this a case of mistaken location or something more deliberate? And perhaps most importantly, what could have happened if things had gone differently? These are the kinds of questions that don't have immediate answers, but they linger long after the moment has passed. Sources close to Dylan say he was left shaken after the incident, and that's something people can understand on a very human level. Because adrenaline can push you through a situation, but once everything slows down, reality hits. Your mind starts replaying the moment. Every decision, every movement, every possibility, every what if. What if the intruder had been armed? What if there had been more than one person? What if the situation had escalated beyond control? What if help had taken longer to arrive? These are not small thoughts. They're heavy. They linger. They echo long after the moment is over. And that's what makes this story more than just a headline. It's not just about what happened, it's about what it felt like. It's about the split-second decisions people make when they're faced with uncertainty and potential danger. It's about instinct versus caution, fear versus action. Now, to fully understand why this story has resonated so strongly, you have to look at Dylan Sprouse himself. For many people, his name is tied to a very specific image, Zach Martin, the mischievous, fast-talking twin from a Disney Channel show that defined a generation. Alongside his brother, Cole Sprouse, Dylan became one of the most recognizable faces of early 2000s television. Their chemistry, their timing, their energy, it all made them icons for millions of viewers growing up. They weren't just actors, they were part of people's childhoods. They were familiar, safe, entertaining. But as time passed, both Dylan and Cole made a conscious effort to step away from that identity. They didn't want to be frozen in time as child stars. They wanted to grow, evolve, become something more. And that transition is never easy, because when the world sees you one way, changing that perception takes time, effort, and sometimes distance. Dylan, in particular, took a path that surprised a lot of people. He stepped away from acting for a while, focusing on education and personal growth. He attended university, explored different interests, and intentionally stayed out of the spotlight. It wasn't about disappearing, it was about redefining himself, about finding identity beyond fame, about becoming a person first and a public figure second. Later, he returned to acting, but on his own terms, taking roles that were different, more mature, more aligned with who he had become, roles that reflected growth, complexity, change. At the same time, he ventured into business, launching his own meadery. It was an unexpected move, but one that reflected his personality, creative, independent, and willing to take risks. Not following the typical Hollywood path, but creating his own. And then there's his relationship with Barbara Palvin. Their story has always felt grounded, almost refreshingly normal compared to the usual whirlwind of celebrity relationships. They met, connected, and built something real over time. No constant drama, no oversharing, just a steady, genuine partnership. They supported each other. They grew together. They built something that felt authentic. They got engaged, got married, and created a life together that seemed relatively private and peaceful. Which is why this incident feels so intense, because it breaks that sense of calm, it disrupts that sense of control, it introduces an element of unpredictability into a life that from the outside seemed stable. And that contrast is part of what makes this story so compelling, because it reminds people that no matter how controlled things seem, life can change in an instant. Now, let's talk about the public reaction, because it's been massive. As soon as the story broke, social media lit up. Fans were quick to praise Dylan, calling him brave, protective, and even heroic. Some described the situation as real-life action movie energy, pointing out how unexpected it was to see someone with his background handle a situation like that. Others highlighted the emotional aspect, expressing relief that both Dylan and Barbara were safe. Some people even said this changed how they see him, not just as an actor, but as someone dependable, someone strong under pressure. But not everyone saw it the same way. There's also been a wave of discussion around the risks involved in confronting an intruder directly. Some people are questioning whether it was the safest move, whether stepping outside increased the danger, whether waiting for authorities might have been the better option. And those questions matter.
Because situations like this don't come with clear instructions. There's no universal right answer, only choices. And those choices are made in seconds, not hours. That's what makes them so complex. That's what makes them so human. Adding to the tension is the possibility that this incident may not have been isolated. Authorities are reportedly looking into whether this trespassing event could be connected to a pattern of suspicious activity and break-ins in the Hollywood Hills area. If that's the case, it shifts the narrative even further, because it suggests this wasn't just bad luck. It could be part of something bigger, a pattern, a trend, something that extends beyond one property. And that possibility has people paying attention, because if one property can be approached, others can too. And suddenly the story becomes larger than just one celebrity. It becomes about safety, about vulnerability, about the illusion of security in places that are supposed to feel protected. For Dylan and Barbara, the aftermath of this incident is likely to be more than just headlines and online reactions. It's about processing what happened, replaying the moment, understanding it, coming to terms with it. It's about reassessing security, maybe changing routines, maybe adding new precautions, maybe seeing their own home a little differently than they did before. Because once something like this happens, things don't just go back to normal overnight. There's an adjustment, a shift in awareness, a heightened sense of alertness, a new understanding that safety isn't always guaranteed, and that's something many people can relate to, even outside of celebrity life. Because at its core, this story taps into a very universal feeling, the need to feel safe in your own space, the instinct to protect the people you care about, the sudden realization that things can change in an instant. Dylan Sprouse didn't expect to be in that situation. No one does. But when it happened, he made a choice. He stepped forward, he took control, he acted. And whether people agree with how he handled it or not, one thing is undeniable. He didn't freeze, he didn't hesitate. He responded. And maybe that's why this story has stayed with people, because it shows a side of someone that we don't usually get to see. Not the actor, not the celebrity, not the public figure, but the person, the human being, reacting in real time to something unexpected and potentially dangerous. It strips away the layers of fame and leaves something raw, something real, and that's what makes it powerful. Because in that moment, Dylan Sprouse wasn't a former Disney star. He wasn't a headline. He wasn't a public image. He was just someone protecting his home, protecting his life, protecting the person he loves. And that's something people understand on a deeply human level. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity updates just like this.